Welcome to this explainer. Look, we've all been there, right? You feel that absolute soul-crushing dread when your alarm clock blares in the pitch black of the early morning. It's tough, and it highlights this incredible tension we see absolutely everywhere today. On one hand, we've got a society and a hustle culture that is completely obsessed with waking up at the crack of dawn to get ahead. But on the other hand, we have the hard, completely unchangeable reality of human biology and genetics. So today we're going to dive right in and look closely at these two totally different paradigms. We'll be drawing from Robin Sharma's massively popular book, The 5 a.m. Club, and then we're going to contrast those ideas directly with the actual medical science behind circadian rhythm disorders.
So I got to start us off with a pretty provocative question. Does waking up at 5 a.m. actually guarantee success? Pop culture constantly equates being an early riser with elite performance, insane productivity, and ultimately winning at life. It's an idea that has literally saturated the business world and personal development circles. But you have to wonder, is this a universal truth, or is it just a really well-marketed habit?
Well, Robin Sharma, the guy behind the wildly successful The 5 a.m. Club, lays it out like this. He says, take excellent care of the front end of the day, and the rest of your day will pretty much take care of itself. Own your morning, elevate your life. The 5 a.m. Club makes this massive, almost unbelievable promise to its readers, that by simply conquering your morning and installing a highly structured early routine, you can basically catapult yourself into the top 5% of performers in the world.
Okay, so how exactly are you supposed to spend that morning? Sharma outlines what he calls the victory hour, which happens from exactly 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. using his 20-20-20 formula. Basically, you chop that hour up into 3 20-minute pockets. First, you move. We're talking intense exercise. Biologically, this is designed to drop your cortisol levels and release a brain-optimizing chemical called BDNF, which actually repairs your brain cells. Second, you reflect. This is your time for silence, meditation, or journaling. And finally, you grow by reading or learning something new. It's incredibly intentional and highly structured. And now, to make this actually work, the book argues that we essentially have to fight a war inside our own heads. On one side, you have the mastery brain. That's your prefrontal cortex, the part of you seeking higher thinking, creativity, and growth. On the other side, you've got the ancient brain, your limbic system. This part is wired with a negativity bias. It's always hunting for danger and constantly seeking distraction. According to the 5 a.m. Club philosophy, struggling to wake up is just an excuse. Giving into distraction is falling into the trap of learned victimhood, and we have to use extreme, unrelenting discipline to override that ancient brain.
And listen, wiring in this intense 5 a.m. routine doesn't just happen magically overnight. It requires what they call the 66-day habit installation protocol. It is a brutal timeline broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 is destruction, literally tearing down your old habits, which feels, well, terrible. Phase 2 is installation, which is kind of this messy, super frustrating middle period. Finally, you hit Phase 3, integration, where the benefits actually start to show up. If you can push through all 66 days, you reach the automaticity point. That's when neuroplasticity takes over and the habit basically runs on autopilot.
Section 1. The biological reality. When waking early causes harm.
But hold on a second. What happens if struggling to wake up early isn't a lack of discipline at all? What if, for a really significant chunk of the population, it's an unavoidable medical reality? Enter delayed sleep phase disorder, or DSPD. This is a recognized chronic neurological condition that fundamentally delays a person's biological clock, their core body temperature minimum, and their hormonal cycles compared to what society considers normal. This absolutely validates the reality of night owls. They aren't trying to be difficult or lazy. Their bodies are literally running on a completely different time zone. They sleep normally, they need the same amount of sleep, they just cannot fall asleep or wake up at conventional times.
This is exactly where the clash between hustle culture and science is the starkest. Hustle culture wants to tell us that failing to wake up early is just learned victimhood, a simple lack of willpower. But science tells us a wildly different story. Research has heavily linked DSPD to specific genetic mutations, specifically in the CRY1 and HPER3 genes. I really want you to let that sink in for a moment. If your genes dictate that your body simply isn't ready to wake up at 5 a.m., literally all the willpower in the world isn't going to change your fundamental DNA.
And this biological mismatch leads us to a really powerful and frankly exhausting concept known as social jet lag.
This is the chronic physical toll and total exhaustion caused when someone with a naturally delayed biological clock is forced to conform to a standard 9-to-5 schedule. If you're a natural early riser, imagine the total exhaustion of flying across multiple time zones. Now imagine feeling that exact same jet lag every single day of your life, just because your work or school schedule refuses to match your internal clock.
And this isn't just about feeling a little groggy before your morning coffee. The consequences of this social jet lag are severe. A massive genetic study highlighted in The Guardian noted that evening types may be at greater risk from the mental toll of having to constantly fight their natural body clock. Forcing a night owl to wake up early carries very real, very dangerous mental health consequences. In fact, research shows that biologically early risers actually have a significantly lower risk of schizophrenia and depression than evening types who are forced into a morning schedule.
Furthermore, DSPD doesn't usually just exist on its own. It frequently overlaps with other really complex conditions. A surprisingly huge proportion of folks with ADHD and OCD are also diagnosed with DSPD. And it goes even deeper than that. Your circadian rhythm can actually be disrupted or worsened by external trauma, like traumatic brain injuries, or even viral infections like long COVID. These things can literally interfere with the body's autonomic timing and delay when melatonin is naturally released.
Get this, between 7 and 16%. That is the staggering prevalence of DSPD in adolescence. It is incredibly common in young people because a delay in sleep phase is actually a totally normal feature of puberty. But here's the tragedy. Because of a major lack of public awareness, this legitimate neurological shift is constantly misdiagnosed as simple teenage laziness or a bad attitude. This massive failure to understand the underlying biology causes immense, completely unnecessary psychological distress for students everywhere.
Section 2. Synthesis. Aligning routine and biology.
Okay, so where does all this leave us? We've got the undeniable productivity benefits of a highly structured morning routine on one side, and the unchangeable reality of genetic biological clocks on the other. How do we actually synthesize these two things? Well, for those dealing with a misaligned clock, medical management usually falls into two camps. You've got non-pharmacological approaches like light therapy, where you time bright light exposure to manipulate your clock, and chronotherapy. On the pharmacological side, doctors might use carefully timed microdoses of melatonin, daytime stimulants like modafinil to help you function, or even low doses of aripiprazole, which have shown some effectiveness. But the absolute most crucial takeaway here is that regardless of your chronotype, strict sleep hygiene and absolute consistency in your schedule are what truly move the needle.
But sometimes, DSPD is simply untreatable, and your biological clock is just not going to shift. In those cases, deciding to actually work with your clock is an incredibly empowering realization. Honestly, it's a legitimate form of life hacking. True productivity for a night owl might mean intentionally choosing careers with shift work, freelancing, or flexible hours. Here in the US, it can even mean utilizing the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA actually recognizes sleep as a major life activity, meaning you can require employers to accommodate later working hours. And you know what? That is just as valid a path to success as joining the 5 a.m. club.
And this brings us right to our synthesis, the core principles of the 5 a.m. club. The intentionality, the deep focus, minimizing your distractions, they are absolutely fantastic. Working in what Robin Sharma calls a tight bubble of total focus will for sure yield incredible results for you. But true mastery isn't about arbitrarily forcing yourself to do this at 5 a.m. if your genetics are screaming otherwise. True mastery is aligning those highly intentional habits with your own personal biological clock. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on as you look at your own daily schedule. Are you fighting your biological clock, or are you working with it? Whether your victory hour kicks off at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m., optimizing your life means truly understanding your own biology rather than blindly bowing to societal pressure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.